Welcome to How We Did It, a podcast dedicated to dentists teaching dentists. This podcast is powered by eAssist Dental Solutions, and all of the guests are eAssist top practice providers that share their experiences, best practices, and what set them apart in their communities. All right, welcome everyone to today's episode. I'm really excited to host Dr. Thomas Kang, who is our March winner of our Top Practice Award through eAssist. So welcome today. Thank you for joining us and learning more about your top practice.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, Doctor, I know we've got to talk before in the past, and you've really done some amazing things in our industry and really just are an entrepreneur at heart. I'm curious to learn just more about you in general. Tell us about your journey into the dental field and why dentistry is your passion.
Sure. There's a lot to bite off there, so I'll break it up into little bits. I graduated from the University of Pacific Dental School in 2003. From there, I completed my residency in Pittsburgh in 2006. And at that time, I knew I wanted to come back to Seattle. Seattle's home for me. That's where I grew up. And so I did open a de novo practice location at that time in our Federal Way area. At the same time, I worked as an itinerant periodontist, so in office, and really was fortunate to have a couple of very good mentors in the people that I worked for. Dr. Paul Huddleston and Dr. Brian McKay. Later, Dr. Bob Hughes, I would say, was a mentor of mine as well. And I would say that they were excellent mentors, both in learning how I wanted to do things and also things that I maybe wanted to avoid, in terms of my practice. Operationally, they were all very strong doctors. Each of them had different skill sets as it related to patients and related to a lot of what had to do with their staff. In dentistry today, staff retention is really important. And as a result of that, if you're on a treadmill of training people, them leaving, needing to replace them, it's really hard to make good forward momentum in your practice because we do depend on them so much for our operations. I would say that healthcare entrepreneurship is my passion, maybe more than just dentistry. I do love dentistry, but within dentistry, there's a lot that needs to happen internally for the leader of the organization from a leadership standpoint. And so I would say that my passion in dentistry right now is trying to help other dentists identify that need, that core need in their teams, or that core role that they need to fill for their teams so that they can have a thriving enterprise. We're very fortunate in dentistry to be able to be small business owners. Even in this increasing kind of corporatization of dentistry, I think that dentistry is moving to the poles in terms of the quality of care at the top and the bottom. It's not the same model that was there 10 or even 15 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's funny, just as you were talking, I remember our previous conversations, and every time that I talk with you, I find it so inspirational, just the way that you look at your career and the difference that you're making with that, and not just a simple 9 to 5, come in, do dentistry, go home. There's a really broad spectrum and kind of the footprint that you're going to leave, in the industry. I find that just to be really inspirational. And I think that is because of providers like you is why that spectrum is changing that you had mentioned. It's going from not in the middle, but there's, it's actually raising to be a essential, need in our every day to day and just essential care. So that's pretty powerful.
Thanks.
And with that, I think that has to do a lot with why you have a top practice and why eAssist, wanted to recognize that in the things that you have done, not only in the community, in the industry, and in your practice. What would you say is something that when you hear top practice, what are those kind of key components to you?
Yeah, I think we're still fleshing out that definition for ourselves kind of all the time. First, we do think of ourselves as still growing, and in terms of the sense that we're growing as leaders in our practice. I don't feel like we're a finished product yet. Kind of every year I sit down and I go, where are the areas really for growth and improvement in our internal operations to create a better product for ultimately who our customers are. And so For me, a top practice first needs to know who their customers are, right? And so for us, obviously, it's our patients. It's the referring offices that send to a periodontal practice like mine. We have partners as well. I think of all the vendors that we work with, equipment, supply, implant companies, all of those are our partners as well. We have a vested interest in their success, and in turn, they will have a vested interest in our success. And so when I think of a top practice, I'm thinking of a practice where the doctor is able to create a clear strategy for growth for their team, allows their team to participate in the success of the practice, gives meaningful feedback to the team members so that they have an opportunity to grow. And then that's reflected in both the top line revenue of the practice, but also the profit in the practice. If I can make a quick plug for eAssist, a role that they filled for us was as our practice has grown, we wanted to outsource certain operations that frankly took up a lot of real estate in our practice. You know, if we have to have one or two dedicated billing specialists on our team of 30, that takes a physical space in our office. That requires time on the phone where they're not as productive as they could be. And so outsourcing that, when we looked at the numbers of what eAssist bills us for the services that they provide relative to the hours and employees saved in our team, the math penciled out to outsource that. And so that's where eAssist has filled a role on our team. We look at you guys as partners of our office as well.
That's wonderful. And then I'm curious with because that's one thing I hear a lot is I can take on eAssist and not have that real estate, taken up. What is something that you were able to kind of find in place of, or was there a replacement, in the practice?
Sure. Yeah, I would say absolutely. So we have three locations that I own. Each of them has a slightly different physical footprint. We have a 7 operatory practice in our Federal Way office. We have a 5 operatory practice in our West Seattle location, and then a 3 operatory practice in our downtown Eastlake location. So each of those has kind of a specific way that you can compose the team.
Sure.
So in our Federal Way office, we can have 2 doctors and 2 hygienists working at the same time out of those operatories. In our West Seattle, we can have 2 doctors and a hygienist, or a doctor and 2 hygienists. And in West Seattle, typically it's a hygienist and a doctor providing care. And so because of the different compositions of the physical teams, the business team that needs to be built around to support them is also different. But because we're all connected in the way that we've set up our phone systems and our appointment books, if we've got an extra physical space where we can add a business team member, they can provide phone coverage to all 3 locations.
Wow, that's awesome.
Really, at the end of the day, all you can do through your efforts is kind of make the phone ring. And so being able to answer that is incredibly important. So if we have a person that's only on the phone with the insurance company versus having that same person be able to field calls from our customers, our patients, and our referring dentists, that's a win for us. And that's why outsourcing the filing of insurance became a reasonable thing for us to include as part of our model for growth.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome. I mean, team dynamic and the way that you have things set up is definitely something that's going to help to aid in that top practice mentality and always growing and continuing to, serve and grow with the industry. Now, I know that you support practices. With any of our listeners are like, man, he's nailed it. Like, how can I duplicate that process in my own practices? Or if I want to grow, I know you help to support other practices. What if providers, or excuse me, other providers, what if they wanted to find you after listening to today's podcast? How could they, locate something of signing up for that support?
We do have a Facebook group. The Facebook group name I will have to share with you later. It does
Sure.
not, I don't have it off the top of my head, but we have about 360 dentists in there. We're kind of posting everything from how you should be creating your algorithm for when an employee says, I was exposed to COVID, to vaccination resources, to us providing testing services for dentists in our community whose staff may have been exposed, all the way through best practices on, what does a good associate contract look like. Most of that kind of stuff, Rachel, I like to give away, primarily because I think that as dentistry as a field is heightened, all of us do better. There is no shortage of work. There's an incredible amount of work. out there. I need more space. I need more doctors right now, and we are, looking to fill those roles, but in the right way, and then staffing the team around them in the right way. So, for people that are interested in that, I would invite them to reach out to me directly. My email address is drkang@pugetsoundperio.com or drkang@vital.management. Vital is spelled VITYL. That is the entity where we are working with a very select number of dentists. But even that, as Rachel, we kind of look in the mirror and we go, what can we, let's say Rachel Grant owns a dental practice and she wants to become a Vital client. What I realize is when I look in the mirror, I go, God, my practice is not a finished product yet. There is still more that we can and need to do to become that finished product. And then we can say, we've got something that we can present to you that's going to be meaningful and helpful. And so, no, if anything, we're recognizing that we need to flesh out what we are first, and then we can maybe move into that realm with a little bit more confidence, I would say.
Great. Well, and the reason I ask is because you had said that there's enough practices, enough patients to go around. The one thing I don't think that we have enough of is the advocate doctors, the passion projects that just want to help other providers. And I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy, and just in talking with you now on our second, podcast. It's really sweet to just see that giving back, and how it's easy to keep going forward, keep growing your own practices, but to help the other providers that are kind of maybe struggling or not knowing where to go. It's just such a huge impact, I think, in the industry. So it's really nice to be able to touch on. So we are going to just take a quick sponsor break, and then we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
This podcast is sponsored by eAssist Dental Solutions. eAssist helps dentists collect 100% of what dentists are owed by insurance companies. Their dental billing experts work with dentists and their teams to ensure the claim submission process is smooth and that dentists and their staff can focus on patient care. If you or someone you know is in need of assistance with the dental billing process, call 1-844-eAssist or visit dentalbilling.com to find out more. So welcome back. We've got Dr. Thomas Kang of our March top practice winner of eAssist Dental Solutions back here with us. And we've just been talking about what got Doctor into dentistry, what that top practice looks like to him. And we're going to go ahead and end everything tied up in a nice little bow with the last question of, Doctor, if providers are looking to improve their practice, what is your best advice to them?
Yeah, I love that question. It definitely has to do with not looking outward, but kind of looking inward. For me, I had recognized that I needed more advanced skills as a leader and a business person. So for me, that was attending a short course to the university, just under a year here at the Foster School of Business, called the Executive Development Program. But even before that, it just started with reading more books about leadership. What we do is hard. It's physically demanding. It's very mentally demanding. We have lots of team members they show up with different concerns about their family, about work, about pay, about a myriad of things. And really being sympathetic and empathetic to your team by being an excellent leader and really hearing them, but then also how you show up each day. Are you coming with a great attitude? Are you willing to do anything that the office needs that day to be successful? Are you setting that example for your team? So before you ask them to do something, do you in fact show that you're willing to walk that walk? So yeah, my advice would be to, invest in yourself, take a look in the mirror and ask, what can I do better today to be an excellent role model for my team? That would be my piece of advice.
Yeah. And that's huge. I mean, just the small things of that would make such a difference of the feeling that your patients get when they walk in the door, because you've set that example, your teams are following that example. And when you have that positivity, it's so hard not to radiate throughout others. And that's the kind of experience I know I would want as a patient, to come in and I feel that kind of loving energy of the office, feel that synergy, because you can go into an
Mhm.
establishment in any kind of line of work and know if there's tension amongst team
Oh,
members
so
or disagreements, right? And it just makes you feel uncomfortable. That's probably the best advice that I've heard thus far. I totally agree. And I mean, I can relate as being the team member and not necessarily the dentist, that it makes a world of a difference. You know,
yeah,
it's definitely somewhere that you want to go back to and you want to help grow and be a part of. And that's 100% great advice. So I think
thanks.
that was a great question to end on.
All right, thank you.
Well, I again appreciate your time today. I know everyone has enjoyed listening to the wonderful advice that you've given. I'm sure a lot of them are going to check you out on Facebook and see what other kind of self motivating things they can find within that content you provide. So, again, it was so nice talking with you again. I hope we can continue this podcast series that we've been hosting. But you have all of the best of luck in all of your practices and everything that you do in the future. It was great talking with you today.
All right, Rachel, have a nice morning. Thank
You
you.
too. Take care. To learn more about eAssist's top practices, visit www.dentalbilling.com and make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode.